The abuse started when I was 10 years old. I'd be laying with my dad in bed, in my parents' bedroom, watching TV. My mom would work third shift, and one night he asked me if I knew what sexual parts were. I felt very disgusted, very dirty. From there, he continued to push himself on me. He would coerce me into rubbing against him or grinding on top of him, acting as if we were having sex. I was very confused. I accepted it because I was 10. On one occasion, Earl asked me to come down to his room. He would leave the door cracked and having sex with my mom, and he wanted me to watch. I did it because I wanted to please him. By the time I was 11, we were actually having sex. This was happening about 4 nights a week, and the nights my mom would be working. Finally got the courage to tell my mom. She immediately talked to Earl, but he made it seem like we were just cuddling on the couch together. After that, the whole thing was just swept under the rug. As I got older, the abuse continued. I knew that as soon as my mom would walk out the door, my dad would have sex with me. It was very terrifying. By the time I was about 15, I didn't want my mom having sex with him. I was his. I belonged to him. I was extremely brainwashed and manipulated by him at that point. So much so that I felt that I was in love with him.
At 11 years old, Amanda says she tried to tell her mother what was going on, but Earl explained it away. He said, look, it was just innocent cuddling on the couch. Then 7 years ago, when Amanda was now 18, she tried to tell her family about the abuse, but then she recanted.
I became very rebellious. I started acting out because of what was happening to me. I was screaming for attention in very negative ways, and my mom sent me to a counselor. I ended up telling my grandmother and my counselor that my father had been molesting me. Immediately, CPS and the police got involved, and they began interviewing my family. But Earl had me very well wrapped around his finger. Earl told me we had a special bond. Nobody would ever come between us. Nobody would ever understand our relationship. And if I told anyone about it, I'd be ripped from my family would be torn apart. I decided to protect my family's happiness and sacrifice my own. I refused to cooperate with the police, I refused to cooperate with CPS, and I refused to comment to them about anything that had happened. They didn't have a victim, so they couldn't have a case, and the investigation eventually was closed. I had been suffering this abuse for 10 years, and for me, it wasn't gonna stop. I had given up my chance to break free.
Well, she says when she gave up that chance, her twisted relationship with her stepfather continued on. It lasted through her engagement, her marriage, and even after the birth of her first child.
About 2 months after my daughter was born, I was at my parents' house and my dad asked me to expose myself to him. I knew that I was right back in that place where I started. I was right back there. I just really thought it was over, and it wasn't. Sometime later, I was visiting my parents, and my dad and I were in the garage. I just remember being pushed up against this table, and my dad is doing what he always has done. After that, we started having sex about once a week. It was almost not an option for me to be able to break away from this because I had a husband whose heart would break if his wife told him what had been happening to her. I had a mother that her husband's been doing this to her daughter for 15 years and she's so blind to it that she can't see the truth. There was no option for me. I had to do what I had to do. One of the final straws came when Earl told me that he tried to make the perfect daughter out of me and failed, so he would have to start over with my daughter. A friend of mine and my counselor urged me to call the police.
Your family, you say across the board, does not believe you.
They don't believe me.
Are you a pathological liar?
I am not.
Have you given them reason to doubt you? I mean, have you lied about other things throughout your life?
I mean, I guess when I recanted my statement, that was a little confusing for everybody. And I'm sure that when I was 11, and I told and Earl manipulated the situation and I agreed with him, I mean, I'm sure that's all confusing for them.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.